If you're after a tank that is both terrifying to play as well as terrifying for the opposite team, then look no other than the Projectio 46, and this tank is one of the ones that I feel like is played completely different to what you would typically expect from a medium at tier 8, and that's what makes it terrifying, because you can play this thing really well, you can play it really badly, and there is a massive disparity between people who get what this tank is all about and people that don't, and that's really where you can suddenly come across the fact that maybe this tank just absolutely sucks for you, or maybe this tank just absolutely sucks for the enemy team as you're demolishing them, rolling through the flanks and just dealing a ton of damage. Now, we've got two replays here. It's going to be a fairly short video. The second replay is really quick. This replay is the longest and probably the better of the two, but the key thing is that what you can see with this tank is that it is an auto-reloading Italian medium tank that tier 8 is, to all intents and purposes, pretty, I guess, okay. I'm not going to say it's overpowered. I'm certainly not going to say that, because this tank is probably not as good as it is on PC. And if you've seen this thing on PC, you probably know all about the fact that this tank can be super dominant when it comes up against people. You can deal a ton of damage, but this on console is a little bit toned down from what you'd expect. And I feel like the main things that you get on PC with it, which are the good accuracy and ability to deal a ton of damage, are kind of lackluster on this, because a lot of the time on console, a lot of the mediums typically will have good alpha damage, good accuracy anyway, because we've got all of the perks, and so the benefits of playing this tank are kind of lowered, I guess. It's not that it's innately that much worse or anything like that, but it just feels a little bit lackluster. But that doesn't really matter for what we're aiming to do with it, because what we're trying to do is play it pretty aggressively. Now, you've seen some absolutely atrocious trades going on right now. It's not looking good. I've lost 1,000 hit points, and I'm now in the position where if this T-34 actually high rolls me or is able to get a shot, we're gone. The Bortig that's at the back, if he managed to hit us, we're also gone. And so yeah, not particularly the greatest start to the game, but don't worry, because you're not always down and out when you play this tank, and that's really where I think this thing terrifies me, because the amount of times where I've kind of messed up and you get punished really hard is actually quite often, because this thing is not particularly very lending itself to new players. If you're a new player on the game, you probably don't want to play this thing, because of the fact that you have to know about the auto-reloading mechanic, which is essentially that if you reload all of the shells in your magazine and fire it as a single fire, it's actually got better damage per minute, which is kind of counterintuitive to what you'd think, since when you've got no in the clip, you'd hope that you're actually reloading quicker, but you know, it is what it is, and that's really where this tank is kind of limited in terms of being able to deal a super high amount of damage. And if you've played any of the Italian medium tanks, you know this mechanic quite well, and I actually really enjoy playing the Italian mediums, which is probably why I enjoy this tank. It's given me an insight as to how to play them. I'm by no means the best player in this at all, and certainly would not want to say so either, since I'm still learning the Italian medium tanks. I haven't played like a ridiculous amount of them. I've literally just ground out the requirements to be able to go and get myself the tier 10, and I think we did it mostly with times 5 XP boosters as well. So yeah, probably a lot worse than I would be if I'd played a little bit more without having to actually gold skip my way through the tech tree, essentially. But either way, we are now down to a one-shot absolute for every single tank in the game, including that pesky artillery piece who went for us early on in this replay. So maybe we'll be able to get some revenge on him as this game develops. But you can see straight away, within a few minutes of the game starting, managed to pick up 1900 damage. You know, we've slowly picked apart the opponents that we've come up against, even if we have taken a ton of damage to begin with. And you're seeing there me just trying to unload the entire clip. Now, it's very often that you'll want to do that, but there's very few opportunities when you probably should, because remember, the more rounds you fire in a clip, the more likely or longer the reload's going to be, and the less likely you are to be able to get consistent damage. But you're seeing here me now reloading the full clip because it's time to go off in. I'm trying to find someone to push up against and actually get a decent game out of this one, since 2000 damage is okay, but maybe we'll be able to push out some assistance or find some other vehicles to take out, or just do some karma collecting by picking up the artillery within the game. And we're trying to rush towards this SU-100M1. Maybe we can get around him or just deal a little bit of damage. We get around the side of him. I'm an absolute fool for not actually just saving my shell. And we try and hit him on the move, which is not the best idea, especially when you're auto-aiming. So always don't auto-aim. If you're wanting to do really well in this game, auto-aiming, a lot of people will do it because accuracy is very, very good. But it's probably not something that you should be doing as much as people do, because a lot of the times you will miss, and often when you're auto-aiming you can reliably hit almost 100% of your shells if you do fully aim. So there's a lot of opportunities where you miss if you just auto-aim in the game. Granted, there's a lot of opportunities where you will still hit, but you should always actually aim where possible. And you can see here we're just trying to hit this J Panther. We managed to put a couple into him and actually pick up some damage, but I'm thinking, you know what, I'll try and reload one more because we want to get this artillery piece. We then fire on the move, completely contradicting what I've just said, and instead of actually going for the shot on the M44, we of course go for the ram at the end and finish off the game. Granted, you know, I didn't have to take myself out there because we did end up getting taken out, suicide I guess, but at the same time it made for a good ending to this game. And of course 3,300 damage, picking up 900,000 silver because of the XP operation where we were able to pick up XP or silver with interest. And yeah, a nice little game, 6 kills as well, so picking up the top gun. So really, really nice to see. And of course let's jump into the next one. Now the next one that we have is of course on El Alamein, and this is the really quick replay because it showcases what this tank is like in a tier 10 game. Of course the previous one, that was a tier 8 game, not a whole lot of things that are going to challenge this tank or put it through its paces, whereas this game definitely will. You've got to do, and it will really showcase the flaws is what I'm trying to say with this one. And what the problem is when you do come into those top tier games, remember most of the time you're not going to be playing top tier, so at the end of the day you want to showcase it in all its glory, even when the glory is bad. So what you'll see here is a replay that, you know, isn't the most amount of damage you're ever going to see, and it's also one that I think is more, I guess what we're trying to do is actually showcase what this tank is going to be like for the majority of players. We're not going to showcase the highest damage replay that I've had in this thing, because I could show you a 5k damage or a 6k damage game if I really wanted to. But at the end of the day, like, it's not necessarily reflective of what this tank can do. You know, when you've played 24,000 battles that I have and spent like 250 days on the game, I would hope that I'd be able to make a tank work, even if it isn't necessarily the best tank in the game. So hopefully this gives you an indication of what it's like truly for you guys if you were to pick up this tank, or even if you're coming up against it, the flaws and how you can maybe take this thing out really quickly, or at least know about it so that you don't get picked apart. Now you're seeing here me trying to go after the Grilla, obviously some bad leading. I mean, that is like typical when you're in this lower tier game. The free damage, of course, you miss, and so you really have to work hard for it. Granted that, you know, that was my own fault for not aiming 100% properly. Probably got a little bit confused with the shell velocity that you see with the AP rounds. They're not the fastest thing in the game, and when you're used to playing a lot of mediums that have high shell velocity, it probably sucks a little bit. But what you're seeing me do here is I spot the E50M, which is not good news, the tier 10 medium that is actually way more consistent than this one. It's going to be a pain. But either way, we're able to get 2 shells off to the chisel, and of course we bounce off the side of his turret because mercenary tanks. But either way, it's now looking pretty bad. We're playing up against a medium tank that is actually really good DPM wise. We're also playing up against the Chieftain, which is not very nice on a ridgeline. So we've got all of that combined. And now the Chieftain's like, I'm going to come over the ridgeline, expose myself to the entire enemy team to get one shot of damage. What a brilliant player, of course. I'm joking. The Chisel then does the exact same, probably peeking in a much better position, you know, over on the right hand side. It's just, you don't have to expose yourself anywhere near as much as what the Chieftain did, which is a good play, but I'm now realising this is probably not a good idea, having to fight with these two players. And then as soon as I move over, we find ourselves up against an Ariete. Which is of course the same vehicle, just the skinned version, and I guess that you guys can know that, I guess, if you've played World of Tanks for any length of time. But really having to work hard. It's not been an easy game so far. I mean, I could have played completely differently, and had I played this map again, I would have probably sat back a little bit more. I wouldn't have pushed up into the position that we did. But the Ariete here, just being a nuisance. I mean, at this point I'm thinking, you know what, this is going to be a terrible game. I'm not going to end up actually doing any damage. But either way, we're just waiting to see if we can pick up at least one more shell, making this less of a bad game, I guess. But you see, we've been able to pick up some assistance damage, and you can do that if you play fairly aggressively with this thing. But remember, most of the time, if you do play aggressively, you do have no armor. So as we said at the beginning, this tank can be let down by its armor model, and also the fact that it doesn't have very good DPM to keep up with a lot of the other mediums that you'll face at tier 8. Granted that a lot of mediums at tier 8 don't particularly have the best DPM anyway, but you're seeing here, trying to hit this T28 takes us 2 shells to hit him, and that really suffers the DPM later on. So you have to think about these things, you know, you have to go for the easy damage, the damage that you can guarantee to be able to hit, because otherwise you're going to fire one round, then end up with worse DPM, and if you miss that one or bounce that one, you're going to end up with even worse DPM, and then it's just not good from then on in. But at this point I'm thinking, I don't really want to poke into 2 tier 10s in the Chieftain and the M60. We saw what happened earlier, as well as the fact that there's an Earthshaker who can, all of them, one-shot me, and in fact they could probably take me out with HE even if they didn't pen. So decide, maybe it's best to try and use my brain within World of Tanks, even if it doesn't usually work. We'll come up into this position, and I'm kind of waiting for this light tank to come over. I'm not entirely sure where he went, whether he's just going to fly around that corner and take me out. But either way, what we'll do is we'll come up into this spot over here, and then maybe we'll be able to get a hit on the Chisel. Now I'm a little bit conscious that, you know, with the Chisel and the Chieftain and the heavy tank, which I believe is a Nomad, with them all there, I'm kind of hesitant as to poke up over this ridgeline. Obviously we're not spotted, but if we do, maybe they'll flick onto us and take us out. I have no idea, but I really want to be doing something. We've got a medium over to the left that's a little bit annoying position. And once again, you know, if I was being perfectly honest, I didn't play this the best. I should have waited a little bit. And of course, you can see me just trying to go after the Chisel. We bounce once off of him, and then we bounce the second one, so not ideal. Probably should have loaded premium within this. The penetration on the standard rounds of this thing is okay at tier 8, but at tier 10, you bounce quite a few, and if you're bouncing at this tier, it's just not good whatsoever. So, having done, what, 3,000 combined, it's okay in a tier 10. I mean, I'd be fairly pleased if I was going for my second mark. If I was going for my third, maybe a little bit more disappointed, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. The team are seemingly doing fairly average, you know, the team are coming up to where you'd expect them to be, and at this point I'm just trying to get some damage on some of these opponents. We managed to find the SDRV on the enemy team, and we're pumping him. Managed to land 2 shells into the side of his tank, which is nice, but it's far from over. 8 versus 8, 2,500 damage, 1,400 assist. It's always nice when you can get some assistance, and as we said, with the view range of this being okay / fairly good, you can get spotting damage, and that is what is going to save you in games where maybe the damage, or maybe you get a ton of rounds hit into you and you've lost a ton of health, which is what happened here. So, you know, this is what is going to be the difference between having a terrible game and having a okay one, or at least helped your team to go for that victory. Now, it's looking like, you know, 8 versus 6, we should probably win this, and at this point I'm thinking, yeah, we've probably won. There's a lot of tanks on low hit points. We've got two tier 9 tank destroyers that are pushing the heavy tank, which I believe is the chieftain still. He's fairly low, so we're hoping that he's going to be able to farm. Both of the tier 9s then decide to go after this chieftain. I think it's a tortoise and of course the RU. Chieftain finishes off the RU and then proceeds to start pumping the tortoise. Not ideal, but fingers crossed they'll be able to take him out, and then we can move over from this flank. We get a nice shell into the STRV, but something fires at us, and I'm pretty sure there's something at the back, and I notice this as we kind of come around that corner. A little bit scared as to what it is, I have no idea, and so we don't want to do anything brash or too crazy. But at this point I'm thinking, yeah, we'll come up by the VK and maybe we'll be able to spot someone. And then I decide, what I'll do is I'll go and help out these tank destroyers, and so we hit the chieftain in the side. And then of course we run out of rounds, and yes, I was not expecting to have bounced off the side with the first round, but then again I should have probably stopped and fully aimed and put both of them into him. So yeah, we get taken out, but hopefully, given the fact that the chieftain's a one-shot, we should have won that game. But don't worry, we lost, because why not? But there you go, the Projectio 46 is an interesting one. I thought it was going to be really good, but it ended up being a bit of a terror, and one that terrorizes opponents in the right game but gets terrored on when you're in the wrong games, which is essentially not tier 8. So yeah, weird one, and I highly wouldn't recommend going out of your way to purchase this. It's certainly nowhere near as good as PC, so just be wary of this one. And of course, if you see it in game, just remember, try and make it fire all of its shells at someone else that isn't you, and then just surround it and swarm it with your better DPM. Other than that, hopefully this video has been good. If it has, then subscribe and like the video, and of course if you don't like it, let me know in the comments, or if you have any questions, let me know in the comments as well. And I hope I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.